The Arkham Origins story is one that takes place 5 years before the events of Arkham Asylum, and gives us a deep dive into Bruce's second year as the Batman. And once again, this premise is freaking brilliant. Some of my favorite moments and experiences are whenever Bruce is in his early years as the Bat. Mostly because they don't play him up as this OP figure like some properties have done recently. Which I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a bit of fun with OP Batman, so to speak, but these kinds of stories put a bit of a hindrance on things because he doesn't have things entirely figured out. The story gives us a more younger and brutal Bruce Wayne as he attempts to make a name for himself as a hero and protector of Gotham. Unfortunately, this one isn't as loved as the previous two entries, and it's definitely not hard to see why. I mean, thinking about it realistically, not much changed from Arkham City going into this game, and it retains some of the basic elements from Arkham City, but other than that, I still really love this game and stand by the fact that it is my favorite in the Arkham franchise. And if I'm being honest, about 50% of my admiration does come from the game's story. This game does a perfect job at showing Batman at his best, being this fear-inducing beast of a man. It also serves as a proper deep dive into Bruce as a character and his relationship with the people around him. People like Alfred, Gordon, Barbara, Joker, and even minor characters like the Assassins. This story shows a more closed-off Bruce Wayne, not attempting to form any meaningful connections to people outside of Alfred. He doesn't have the trust of Gordon and the police force. The people and criminals of Gotham still mostly see him as a myth to be feared. And he shows so many times that he doesn't want that loving connection with others because he's afraid he'll ultimately feel the same pain as he did when his parents died. I know that you've heard people talk about this scene time and time again, but I cannot help but highlight how amazingly brought together it actually is. And even his relationship with the Joker is perfectly told here. And yes, I might as well bring it up here so I don't have to talk about it later. I still am pissed that we were baited into thinking that this game would be about Black Mask hiring these assassins to kill Batman and whatnot, only for it to just be about the Joker. We got this guy in literally 2 games. You can go at least 1 without using him. But the messed up part of it is I can't even be mad at them because the way they use Joker in this game is freaking amazing. So, WB Montreal, I hate you for making this decision and tricking me into thinking that we were going to get something different, but at the same time, I love you for making this decision because of the way that you actually use him in this story. This game best shows the relationship and dynamic that Batman and Joker have. And it's best that they do it here, being that this is where they properly meet. Not to directly quote the Clown Prince himself, but these two are literally people who suffered traumatic events and were both left with different viewpoints on reality. Bruce wanting to take a hands-on approach to justice, and Joker wanting to take a hands-on approach to chaos and anarchy. This game excellently shows and tells the kind of dynamic these two have, and I love how it shows this iconic hero and villain duo where they make their connection. I know most of this has been me going over the story, but legitimately it's where I get half of my enjoyment from this game. Not to say that the gameplay is bad, it's just pretty lacking. Like, the basic combat elements are there with a few new gadgets and upgrades, most notably being the Shock Gloves, a weapon that is shamefully not brought back in Arkham Knight, the Remote Claw, which allows you to string up enemies from a distance, the Concussion Grenade, and so much more. As well as a new feature, the Sherlock Holmes-style crime scene feature, where you can scan a particular area and rewind or fast-forward events to see how they play it out, and I freaking love this. It's a simple thing that just highlights Bruce's more detective nature. Not to mention the new enemy types they add in, like the martial artists. These guys are a giant yet fun pain in the ass, because they require you to think on your feet instead of pressing the counters over and over and over again. And sometimes you'll even need to implement multiple counters at once. Not only that, but the bosses in this game are freaking phenomenal. My 2 favorites are the Copperhead and Deathstroke boss fights. Deathstroke's fight in particular being my favorite boss fight in the entire Arkham franchise. Because much like the martial artist, you actually have to focus and get into the fight instead of mashing counter over and over again. And the added spectacle of seeing these two go at it is enough to keep you visually interested for the entire duration of the fight. And just to be an asshole, he'll even throw in his own gadgets to disorient you as well. This game technically is the Arkham series' first attempt at putting Batman in the meat of Gotham City. Not an asylum, not Arkham City, just plain old Gotham City. And especially compared to the last 2 entries, it's not all that impressive. Gotham in itself feels pretty freaking empty. The streets and city overall feels pretty barren, and it doesn't get improved in Arkham Knight at all. The most hope we have for an alive Gotham City in a Batman game is Gotham Knights, which, at the time that I'm recording this, hasn't come out yet. And not to mention the overall city feels pretty samey in terms of overall design. Not a lot of places stick out as opposed to locations in Arkham City, and that's honestly really disappointing. One added choice I do love is having this game set around Christmas time. Because I don't know, having superhero stories set around the holidays always just felt so cool to me. Not to mention Batman stories are pretty synonymous with the holidays. The voice cast in this game is great as well. Considering that they couldn't really get the big guys like Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill for this game, they temporarily brought in Roger Craig Smith, yep, Sonic the Hedgehog himself is voicing Batman, and Troy Baker, Joel Miller himself, as the Joker. And these guys do such a good job at voicing these two characters that if Conroy and Hamill were to retire from the Bat and the Clown respectively, I would honestly trust these guys to give a good performance in their absence. Overall, Arkham Origins serves as a serviceable follow-up to its predecessor, with a decent amount of originality, an amazingly told story, stellar boss fights, and blatantly I feel is really worth playing. Okay, so let's say goodbye to this little series once and for all with its admittedly disappointing final entry, Batman Arkham Knight. Okay, before I really get into this, I can't help but stress badly enough that this is not a bad game. Technically, this is the Batman game of all Batman games. The Batman game that all of us have been waiting for. But to me personally, and for a bunch of other people, this is a bit of a step down from what we previously got with Arkham City. Mechanically and graphically, this game is damn near perfect. Mostly feels like a natural evolution on what we originally got with the previous two Rocksteady games, whilst also adding a few new additions, some good and some overused, that make a bit of a downgrade. Not a massive downgrade, but a downgrade nonetheless. The story and opening cinematics are beautiful. The rain pouring down on the city, the graphical quality on all the people roaming the streets, the music, the camera angles, all makes for an absolutely amazing start for the final entry in this series. The story feels a heck of a lot more ambitious than the previous games, with it being much longer and adding way more to the table, and this isn't necessarily a good thing in my opinion. I can understand them wanting to make the story way more grand than the previous two, but unfortunately it was poorly executed. There are a lot of weird continuity errors, dumb character writing, really obvious story beats that you can see coming from a mile away, and just a lot of weird shit in general. First off, Jason Todd in the lead up to this game, of course, was discussed in a lot of theories about who the new mysterious identity of the Arkham Knight would be. And the idea of the Arkham Knight itself is freaking genius, making your own original character for the story of this universe, effectively adding another possibly interesting character to the lore of Batman. But it's all ruined with these out-of-nowhere flashbacks to Jason Todd being tortured by Joker in the Arkham Asylum. And the more it goes on, the slowly you start to piece together who the identity of Arkham Knight really is before the big reveal even happens. At some point it becomes less of a twist they are anxiously trying to get to, and more of a tedious ride-along where you're waiting for them to reveal it to you. Jason was never brought up or hinted at in the previous games, so just having him randomly brought up here and there throughout this game makes it way too obvious. And when we do get the reveal and it's all out there, Jason just feels like a poor and inferior version to his normal Red Hood counterpart. He's bent on killing Batman, even though he has several chances to do so, and comes off as a whiny man-child half the time. And they try to make it feel triumphant in the end when he saves Bruce, and all it honestly got was a, oh shit, it's Jason! Alright, that's cool. And gives us no interest in Jason's character beyond just being an obvious twist. And the supposed reconciliation and sorrow that Bruce feels for Jason comes across as extremely half-assed. But I'll get into Bruce's character later. Also, Joker. Again? Really? We just had 3 games with this guy, and once again, you tease us with Scarecrow being the main villain, only to pull the old bait and switch and say, nope, Joker was the main villain all along. Look, there are other interesting Batman villains than just the Joker. When you constantly integrate him into the stories, you're pretty much sidelining a majority of Batman's most popular rogues gallery, who barely have a chance to shine. And Batman has one of, if not the most popular rogues gallery in all of comics, and that makes it even worse. Even the way they brought him back is convoluted as shit. But another messed up thing is, I can't even entirely hate it, because Mark Hamill is freaking fantastic as the Joker. I hate that he's here, but I also love that he's here because he's given such hilarious commentary on things going on. Sometimes it does break the immersion and tension, but other times you just honestly can't help but to laugh your ass off. Oh, and remember that side story in Arkham City that hinted at Hush having a major role in the next upcoming game? Well, I hope you were prepared for disappointment in the form of a quick and boring side mission. Oh, and Scarecrow and his entire plan, I should say, is just confusing beyond all types of comprehension. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to genuinely think about this before you answer. What exactly was Scarecrow's plan in this game? He wants to rule Gotham City. Simple. Standard villain bullshit. Okay. Oh, but he also wants to tear down the image of Batman and all he stands for. Alright. I can imagine those two coinciding with one another. You still got me. You still got me. But he also wants to use the Cloudburst to destroy Gotham City and make it a nightmarish landscape. Okay, I'm sorry. What? Whilst also claiming he wants to rule Gotham City as his own. Do you see how some of that shit kind of starts to contradict itself? Okay, and what else is there? Oh yeah, Batman. Why the hell did they make Batman the dumbest character in this entire story? Not only do they have him make stupid decisions constantly, they always force him to give this winded speech to his friends on how this is the last night they have together and whatnot. And most of the time, it kind of seems dumb depending on which order you do things in. If you completed the main story after you did the side missions, then there is some merit to it. But if you completed the side missions before you did the main story, you're kind of left to wonder why this particular night is as grand as Bruce is making it out to be. And the ending I find is unimaginably dumb. It all relies on getting Batman without his utility belt into Arkham Asylum, where Scarecrow has Jim and Tim held hostage. And it's not like Scarecrow has the entire place run with like his militia or whatever. So I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be that difficult for Bruce to take down one guy with a gun holding two hostages. And another thing that I feel needs to be brought up is that Dick and Selina are both in the city. So it also makes even less sense for why he wouldn't just rely on one of them to help them out when he got to the asylum. This ending really just has a bunch of holes that can easily be poked through. They're trying to make it seem like this story is pushing Batman to his absolute limits when it honestly isn't. And they somehow make Batman as uninteresting as a protagonist as possible. He's as dull as he can be. They make him feel like a suicidal moron. And it generally just feels like the writers were more focused on ending the story rather than just actually giving us a story that was worth ending on. Okay, story stuff aside, let's get into the actual gameplay. Mechanically, almost everything in this game feels like a natural progression from where we previously took off. Most notably, stealth. Once again, you have a variety of gadgets to use at your disposal. You can use a remote that can disable nearby drones. You have this new voice modulator that you can use to direct enemies to points that you want them to be. That one might be my personal favorite. Just the stealth overall in this game is probably my favorite out of the entire Arkham series. Due to the variety of gadgets that you can use, and once again, just by how fun it is to pick off your victims one by one. One new mechanic that is interesting, to say the least, is without a doubt the multi-takedown move. You can fill up your fear meter by doing 1 or 2 takedowns, and once you charge it up completely, you can do the multi-takedown move to knock out many targets at once. Now, while this move is pretty cool, it's not as innovative as I'd hoped it to be, because it makes stealth a bit of a cakewalk. All you really have to do is take down 1 or 2 solo enemies, find a lot of enemies for you to multi-takedown, then use a smoke pellet, and then boom, you're gone. Again, I have to reiterate, it is a really fun move to use, but as a whole, it just kind of oversimplifies the stealth for me a little bit. I also like to point out that this city is still empty as hell, and I already know there's a story reason as to why civilians aren't in the city. Like, Darien, this city was evacuated when Scarecrow took over. Okay, I get that, but I feel the need to remind you that this game's story takes place within a single night. As in, you mean to tell me that they got everyone out of an entire city composed of 3 whole islands? You mean to tell me that they got everybody out in, what, less than 5 hours? I don't know, I just don't buy that. The combat is pretty much the same with a few new added additions of being able to take down enemies in several different ways while you're in a massive brawl. You can pick up random weapons they drop and use it against them. And what's really freaking cool is that when you're fighting alongside other characters, you can do this double takedown move and even play as them for a little bit. Not just that, there are also several enemies that can revive fallen ones. They have to be able to take them out alongside with the others. And it's a nice bit of added difficulty. I feel the traversal in this game is also the most fun that it's ever been because the grappling boots gets a massive upgrade in terms of speed and how far you can take it. But that also leads into this game's most infamous conclusion, that being the Batmobile. Now, the Batmobile mechanically is not terrible in this game. Oh, it's far from bad mechanically. This thing is freaking perfect, but my god is it overused. In terms of traversal, it's probably my more preferable take than the grapple boosting. I don't know, just driving around the city is so fun with the Batmobile. It definitely feels more immersive within the city and you being Batman in general. My issues with it come from when they constantly force you to be stuck in the vehicle. There are countless missions, side missions, where it is mandatory that you have to be in this car at all times. Most of the stuff that you did normally in previous Arkham games, for some reason, they make it mandatory in this game that you have to use the Batmobile for most of it. And especially the tank battles. The tank battles, I feel, are fun some of the time, but they really do overstay their welcome. I know people have clowned on this before, but the tanks are manually controlled. Arkham Knight and Scarecrow could easily win this by just putting guys in the tank so Bruce won't just blow them the fuck up. There are just so many points when the Batmobile is forced upon you, to the point where the first time I ever played this game, I stopped because I was stuck during the Cloudburst area where they sent like damn near 15 drones after you. I'm not even kidding when I tell you that when I got to that part, I stopped playing the game for like damn near 4 months on end. Until I was randomly searching through some of my old stuff and I found it, I popped it back in, and I saw this on my screen and I immediately was fed up. How the hell am I supposed to take these stealth missions seriously when I'm quietly sneaking around in a giant-ass death machine? I have a lot more enjoyment in revisiting and replaying the previous Arkham games, because those ones aren't gradually dragged out by the usage of the Batmobile. The Batmobile isn't something that ruins the game entirely, or should have been removed in general. I just wish it was used a bit less than it was during the entire thing. Hell, you really want to know how gratuitous these tank battles get? Deathstroke is in this game. And of course, if you've been paying attention, you would already know that the Deathstroke boss fight from Arkham Origins is my favorite boss fight in the entire Arkham franchise. And in this game, we don't even fight him head-on, we fight him in the stupid tank! And while I'm on the topic of the boss fights, they aren't really anything to behold either. Firefly's in this game. Another returning character from Arkham Origins, with a pretty fun boss fight in that game. But in this game, all you do is chase him around in the friggin' Batmobile. I never even got to fight the Riddler because Riddler trophies. And a Riddler boss fight in the first place is a stupid idea anyway. Two-Face is a character I even struggle to consider a boss fight. And in general, these boss fights are all just kinda stale. This game also had a bit of DLC, and it's just okay. Like, the characters that were added were fun as hell, like Catwoman, Robin, Red Hood, Nightwing, Harley Quinn. All are diverse from the titular Batman. The main one that stands out is the Matter of Family DLC, where you play as Barbara Gordon during the days of her being Batgirl. I know people praise this DLC in particular a lot, and it's hard not to see why. It's really easy to see how it stands out amongst the rest. Not just that, but the Season of Infamy DLC pack gives us 4 new side missions to coincide with the main Arkham story. And I like it. It's pretty fun. That's all I have to really say about that. Overall, Arkham Knight is a mechanically great game with astonishing combat, mixed beautifully with an evolution of gadgetry and visuals, but is brought down by its piss-poor storytelling along with a great overusage of the Batmobile, while also having to cap off the entire Arkham series in a pretty lackluster manner. So, if you agree or disagree with anything I've said, let me know right down there in the comments below. Also be sure to like and subscribe. This is Darren and GNB Productions, and take care.